I mean, my own journey of recovery discovery started about 18 years ago, and I was one of the fortunate few people that got there almost despite the services. And I went through a process of having all treatments got to offer, volunteering, working in services, and we're going back about the year 2000. The NTA, the National Treatment Association, was overseeing the commissioning of drug treatment in England and Wales. And they were putting quite a bit of pressure and encouraging commissioners across England and Wales to employ people from the lived experience and really get user involvement moving so that they could have the reality in the process of planning, designing treatment services. I was fortunate enough to get one of those jobs back in 2004 and worked for Hampshire Drug Action Team, the commissioners, and moved over 2 years later over to Portsmouth. Portsmouth is a very interesting place. It's high degrees of poverty. It's often referred to as a northern city in the south. We're very good at topping the leagues around things like overdose and domestic violence and mental health. Fortunately, the football team's not doing too bad at the moment. But my role there was to develop mechanisms where we could seriously involve the reality in the whole planning and designing of treatment, which is a really interesting process in itself. In order to do that, I had to get a user involvement group together, and it was relatively easy in Portsmouth. We had 3 residential rehabs feeding into the community. As people got discharged, they were resettling in Portsmouth. What was happening to a lot of those people, once all their treatment needs were trying to resettle and reintegrate, especially when you've been in a rehab and a bubble for a long time, everything was breaking down and people were relapsing and coming back and round, the revolving door, they called it. And very good business model if you're a treatment provider, but not so good for those that are suffering from addiction. 3 rehabs feeding in, lots of people looking for things to do. So user involvement, as people came on board and started getting involved, it started giving them a bit of structure to their week. And we used to be able to pay people in those days for being involved. So we'd seriously involve them right across the board. We had people, we were then called PUSH, Portsmouth Users Self-Help. It's a title we changed because we started changing the terminology and some of the negative labels that had been given to us, and users didn't fit us no more, being service users or drug users or whatever. And we changed to Pushing Change when we became a charity in 2015. The involvement stuff in the group itself, I mean, peer support happens quite naturally. And I mean, we set up an advocacy service as a user group and really started having an impact. What we were finding is what providers reported to commissioners, there was a complete contrast in the reality when we got the feedback from the ground. Their 6-week waiting times for a detox, the reality was it was about 9 months to a year. I mean, this really sort of surprised the commissioners, but enabled us to develop some pretty decent services eventually over time. But those 2 contrasts in the feedback immediately created some sort of friction between providers and the service user involvement movement, really, because we were reporting honestly, and theirs were less than honest, to say the least. If I can do the next slide. I mean, we grew over time. What we realised is, you know, give people a little bit of responsibility, give them some training, they grow with that, they respond to that. And, I mean, we grew individually and we also grew as a group and became we were eventually funded by commissioners, become a community group, and that served us very nicely for quite a lot of years. It served us very nicely for a lot of years, but we had to become a charity eventually. I mean, we just grew and grew. So what are we today? We're a peer-led, we're a community. We prefer to be a community rather than a service, although we provide an awful lot, as you'll see in a minute. We're very person-centred. So somebody comes in and they ask us, we ask them, what can we help you with? They tell us, and that's what we help them with. 9 times out of 10 these days, it's benefits. We attend a lot. We've attended hundreds of tribunals over the years for people's benefits. So we have to represent them in court so that they can be on the right benefits to get treatment. We've never lost a case, ever. People's time at pushing change isn't time limited, okay? We've got, our ethos is you come, you grow, and you go. And our responsibility is to provide the means for people to do that. We're also a training centre. We deliver a course called Working with Addiction and Recovery, and that's a presentation in itself. Probably talk a little bit more about that in a minute. If we can just have the next slide, please. Okay, what we do, I mean, we operate in Portsmouth. We have 2 bases. We have a shop front, and we hire lease rooms up in the main central library, where we have a weekly open forum. That's attended these days by about 30 people a week, and that's their introduction to pushing change. They're coming in and usually become members. The open forum is about making sure people know what's going on, what they're entitled to, and providing any support that they might need. We provide advocacy clinics. So we're out in the community at various supported housing, hostels, the prescribing service. We're making sure people's got a voice in those services. 2 of those clinics are at the Job Centre. We've got a very good relationship with the Job Centre, and they put a lot of people our way. They're all very popular groups. The rural group, Recovery Around Women, is well attended and well supported. We've got a lot of women in there. Some of them are connected to social services. Their children are at risk. Some have lost children. And I mean, as an organisation, we have a responsibility for safeguarding. Quite often we have to pass up information. We never pass up information without a plan around that person. And those plans are usually successful. With the gender stuff, we've got a men's own group, and it's a great opportunity for men to learn to be vulnerable with other men. It's a huge challenge for us, as we've heard earlier. The men's own group is, again, well attended. The changes group, that's every single day. We provide a lunch, and that's for people that are still in the chaos, that think they might want to make some changes, and that's all they need to do, is think they might need to make some changes. So we put that on every day for them, and people really grow out of that. Once they can actually start getting a bit of a buzz on making some changes, and we're not telling them what changes they have to make. You don't have to stop using drugs. You don't have to stop using alcohol. But as they become more engaged, they start realising what their own barriers are to realising their full potential, and they start making some serious changes. We provide a lot of SMART groups. That's self-management and recovery training. It's quite basic peer-led CBT stuff. And they're really, really popular. We've got a provider in the city that gets paid an awful lot of money for putting on the psychosocial groups. Hardly anyone attends. For them to have absolutely no attendance isn't unusual. Ours are oversubscribed. You know, quite often we can find 20 people turning up for one of our SMART groups, and it's not unusual to have to split them to keep them safe. The Moving Forward project is something we set up about 4 years ago with Winchester Prison. And the intention was to create peer pathways. So we deliver smart groups, and we've got people in recovery in there with keys, and but specifically getting people from Portsmouth and introducing them to the smart groups. And when they come out, they're already connected and start attending our smart. And we get lots of change from people coming through the prison system. We have a homeless drop-in at the end of every week. And again, homelessness in Portsmouth is huge. Nearly every shop down the local commercial road has somebody occupying it overnight in the doorway. We provide those people with advocacy, with some food, and we are quite happy to help them navigate the system and try and get them adequately housed. The Springboard group is, coming into this recovery malarkey, we can find ourselves quite socially excluded. So the Springboard group, they attend various events going on in the community and support each other as peers in doing that. They might be going to the theatre, they might be going to a comedy night, so that they do get to be socially excluded and supported while they're doing it. Saturday recovery group, we have people with addiction problems that work coming in on a Saturday quite often. It's the only opportunity in the week. Your traditional providers don't provide anything at the weekend. They love it. And working with addiction and recovery, that's the big one. I mean, people coming into Pushing Change are entering a process, if you like. They're there as a group member, and quite often they start with their own support needs needing to be addressed. And then they move into the advocacy, and with training and support, once they move into the advocacy, all of a sudden, they've got responsibility for helping somebody else as well. People really grow in these relationships. They'll be in advocacy for a while, and then we offer, and it's great to see Laser represented here today, we offer accredited training to people, and I mean, it's based on 3 units, so they look at the biological, they get to start understanding themselves as human beings. That's what the training does, and they get a qualification out of it. So they start understanding the biology of addiction, the psychology of addiction, and the social side of things and how that impacts us. And it really does instigate a journey of discovery, because all of a sudden they've got this subject which is themselves. And we really increase people's self-awareness, and they really grow. And then they get into some serious volunteering. Once they've got that training behind them, they've got a good foundation in recovery, we can get them out. And we have people working as what we call recovery brokers across the city in all the services they're operating. So we've got people with the lived experience in recovery, in every service. I mean, people coming into the prescribing service will probably meet someone from Pushing Change. Quite often, people will come to Pushing Change and not touch the services either, and get well there and move on. They're in this process. We know it's not time limited. Usually it's time to move on. They know it, we know it, and all of a sudden I'm writing references because people are seeking employment, or if we've got enough money, we employ people ourselves. It's been really successful, the model, and I mean, it comes with its challenges as well. We've been around for about 11 years now, and it's been exceptionally challenging. I haven't really got time to get into all that now, but really looking forward to the afternoon session so we can really get into all that. Back in 2015, I was still based in commissioning with the local authority, and it was 2014, sorry, and because of this success and the changes we'd made across the substance use system, I was asked to see if there's something we could do and maybe set something up to support and challenge some of that, the mental health system. And that's where my colleague comes in, Rebecca Stanley, who's going to talk a little bit about what went on from there.
Yeah, hello. So I work with PUSH, I work with the training centre on the course, but today I'm here to talk about SHIFT. As Danny said, it sort of emerged from PUSH. It was in response to need, the revolving door that Danny's spoken about, isolation, people getting medicated and then just staying at home. So we wanted to find out why. Why are people doing this? I want to ask the people that are living that experience. So we started putting some meetings together, getting people together with the lived experience, asking them what is it, what are their needs, what is their experience, what's going on. These groups went on for a few months and eventually became the SHIFT group. The group decided their own name. SHIFT, it's self-help, inspiring forward thinking. The logo is designed by SHIFT, all of the groups. So the way that SHIFT design groups are, we'll ask the wider membership and people with the lived experience, what is the need? And then we'll have a committee of peers who are people who have a sustained level of recovery, who want to start taking on more responsibility. SHIFT is about developing personal responsibility, autonomy, independence, confidence, all of that. So people on the committee, they feel more able to take on that challenge. So what they'll do, we'll ask the wider membership and other people with the lived experience, what is it you want? And the committee will work out how we can put that together. So an example would be the wider membership wanted something in over an evening or a weekend because it can get a little bit lonely over that time. They also wanted something creative. They'd like access to a garden. They'd like to be able to sit in a garden if they want to. They find that peaceful. So the committee have put on a Saturday 3-hour drop-in with a light lunch in a room with a garden with loads of creative materials. So that's an example of a group. I mean, I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I'll talk a little bit about the groups. So these are the groups that we're running at the moment. These are open groups. Anybody can do this. We've got people on the committee who are taking on the Wednesday coffee drop-in. That is a coffee drop-in for people that struggle with high social anxiety, isolation. It's like a step in the door. It's like out of the house, into a room. There's no structure. The doors are open. There's windows all around. There's access to a garden. You don't have to go through the main building to get in that room. You can go through the back. So people can take that first challenge. Some people have been isolated for many, many years. And also what makes people feel calmer is everybody there is a peer with the lived experience, all at different stages of recovery, discovery, development, so people can relate to each other. They can relate to where someone is a month ahead of me, rather than this person who's got 10 years of recovery. So people can inspire each other that way. The Thursday main forum is where people come together. Again, the group have decided the structure of this. We do an icebreaker, a check-in, then we talk about opportunities that are going on around the city that people might want to get involved in. And then we do an open discussion that gets decided on that day. It could be anything, absolutely anything, and they're fascinating. The possible future of cyborgs, do you need to love yourself to love another? So you can see how it can go absolutely anywhere. The Creative Fridays is a new thing. The group want more creative things. They're finding this very, very helpful. So we now have Creative Fridays. There are 2 different art groups. It's not art therapy, but there is a therapeutic element to it. So people will again say, this is what we want. We want to work on confidence. An amazing lady called Laura will come in and say, okay, well, these are ideas of what we can do. 1 or 2 people don't want to do that. They can do whatever they want. It's absolutely fine. And then we have a creative writing in the afternoon, because people like that too. And the events. So this is another thing. People want to go out, the social element of it. So the committee will organise all of the events. We have summer events. So it's one thing each month in the summer. Again, the groups say what they want. Last year, we did? Picnics, walks in nature. We went to see a house that I can't remember the name of on the Isle of Osborne House on the Isle of Wight. We have a open mic night once to launch that once a year as well. The groups want two a year now. They're amazing. We do a bit of a build-up, bring somebody else in who can teach us creative writing, and we sort of do practice runs. We then spread that widely across the city. At the moment, it's in conjunction with, is it the Mental Health Awareness Month? So we'll promote it with all of them kind of flyers. And we get loads of people come in, and to just stand up and say a poem or a story or something that means something to you, that in itself, people find that it can transform people. It really can. What we're doing now, I mean, we're very closely supported by Push. So we've got people on the committee now who have outgrown the committee, but they would like to stay involved. I'm struggling to move to the next slide. So, people, the broker course, excuse me, that's the working with recovery and addiction. We then call people recovery brokers, so I've just put that in. Please excuse me, but that's nickname for it. So we've now got shift members, committee members on the broker course. They've just completed level 1. They've done the voluntary training with Push. However, we don't have volunteers at the moment, so we're going to sit down with the group and decide, now that they know the policies and procedures and everything, what is this voluntary role going to look like? What are you going to be called? Are you going to be peer support workers, volunteers, something else that you want to be called? So that's quite exciting, actually. And then we've got the service user involvement, so we try to get as involved as we can on decision making. At the moment, there's one of our committee members today, actually, sitting in with the some commissioners and other service providers doing the tender evaluation for the new mental health living, supported housing. I hope that came across. And then the Mental Wealth Cafe and the Human Library. This is another thing that our group love. There's the Mental Wealth Cafe is once a month in our city, and it brings everybody together that works with mental health, so we're there. And then we also do something called the Human Library, which is people are the books. So if somebody wants to know something about anything, they'll look for the book title, it might be anxiety, and then they'll speak to somebody and somebody will share that experience. I think that's it. I think I've just flown through that. So that's it. So that's Shift.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We'll leave it there, right.